Hey everybody, welcome to the next installment of the Seagull Models Maxi Lift assembly videos. On this episode, we're going to go ahead and talk about getting the Bombay door servo installed. We're going to talk about getting the tow hook release servo installed. And then we're going to start working on getting this awesome Stinger 35cc engine installed. On this video, I'm going to stop short of just getting the engine mocked up onto the firewall. And then I'm going to cover the cowl installation and things past that on the next video. So stay tuned. Here we go. So the next step is going to be to go ahead and get the tow hook servo installed and also the bomb release servo in the back here. Pretty standard servo installation. You might have to open up the servo bays just a little bit, and both servos should install quickly and easily, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the switch installation. Alright, so now we're going to go ahead and install our switches. I happen to really like the Electro Dynamics Ultra switches because I also use the Electro Dynamics Lifey packs. I like to use these A123 Nanos, and if I use their switches, I can charge through the switch and balance charge the Lifeys. I will make another video here to show you how these work. It's a really nice setup, and this is all I use in all my planes. I like to use consistency on all my gas planes, so I don't have to worry about settings. Every time I plug this in, I know I have the same setting because I use the same battery setup in all my airplanes. So this is going to be really simple to install. You can see right here the faint outline of the switch cutout. What you want to do is you want to make sure that you have a really sharp hobby blade, and then you're simply just going to go in and cut the covering out around the opening. Again, you want to make sure you have a really sharp blade for this step. It makes it so much easier and you get such a better cut. And you shouldn't have any issues with this at all. Simply just cut it right along the slot here, and that should be good to go. Next step is going to be to check the fit on my Electro Dynamics Nano switch. This looks like it might be a little small, so I may end up having to open up this opening just a little bit, but we're going to check it. Actually, that looks like a perfect fit. So I'm going to go ahead and take off the guard. And what these do is hold it from the back side. So when you take off the two screws, you can remove the plate from the back. It does have a little rubber grommet. You want to keep the little rubber grommet on the side of the switch, and then you can go ahead and install your switch. You want to make sure that the rubber grommet is still on the outside of the airplane. This is going to keep any water or any moisture from leaking into the switch from the outside. Then you're going to go ahead and place your retaining bracket onto the back of the switch. You're going to slide it through the wires and all the way up to the switch. And you'll go ahead and seat that on there. And then you can just go ahead and run your screws, and that will get your switch installation complete. So now that we've got this switch installed, I'm going to go ahead and install the switch on the other side. Now the other side has got a smaller opening for the switch pre-installed. So what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to go ahead and open that up so that my switches can be the same on both sides. Again, I like to avoid confusion and having different switches and setups. So I'm going to go ahead and go over here to this other side and make this hole a little bit bigger so that I can fit the same switch that I have on the port side as I do on the starboard side, and that just eliminates confusion. It also allows me to charge on both sides with my charger, and we should be good to go after that. So getting ready to mount the engine on here, we're going to go with the Stinger 35cc. One of the things I'm looking at is I've noticed that the manual calls for 180 millimeters from the back of the prop hub or the front of the prop hub all the way to the firewall. If I mock this up, I'm only getting like 170, so I need to go 10 more millimeters outboard to get to 180. So a couple of things I made the decision on. So the engine mounts, or I should say the standoffs that came with the model, and this is the standoffs that come with the model. You can see I'm already gaining quite a bit from using the standoffs that come with the 35 Stinger. So I'm going to go with the standoffs for this 35 Stinger. And what I'm going to have to do because of that, the 35 Stinger is threaded for a 5 millimeter blind nut, and the blind nuts that are inside the fuselage are going to be 4 millimeter. So I'm going to have to pop these out and put 4 new 5 millimeter blind nuts in. I'll probably have to open these holes up a little bit with my drill to be able to mount the engine. So what I'm probably going to have to do, I noticed that if the engine was mounted as it was here, the muffler would actually touch the firewall. And I want to make a little bit of space. So I think gaining that extra 10 millimeters will give me some space around the muffler so that I can get good airflow. The one thing that I might do on this is the secure holes for the muffler. I might actually see if I can easily make some holes in the firewall so that I can get to the muffler bolts without having to take the entire motor off. Because in this configuration, I would have to unbolt the entire motor to make any corrections to the muffler, like if it becomes loose at the field or something like that. I'd like to be able to get through it. So if I'm going to see how the measuring works here, but I may end up opening up, because with this large hatch area here, you're going to be able to service, with the gas setup, you're going to be able to service your tank, your muffler bolts possibly, and anything else that you need to service. So this is a really great feature to have all this room to work with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to knock these blind nuts out, and I'm going to replace these with 5 millimeter blind nuts. And I've also gone ahead and grabbed some longer 5 millimeter bolts just in case I need them to make up the difference in the back. These are pretty close as far as being to the end of the thread when you get them installed, and I want to make sure that I have some extra space so that I can get to the standoffs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off by knocking out these blind nuts, and then I'll go ahead and install the new blind nuts, and we'll go from there. So I'll show you how I'm doing this. For those of you that have never done this before, all I'm doing is taking my screwdriver, installing my screwdriver into the hole, and then a couple of light taps with the mallet, and those blind nuts come right out so that you can install the new ones. These are going to be 4 millimeter blind nuts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and hang on to these and put them in my box because there's nothing wrong with them. They're just fine. You can use them on another project or if you need one later. Okay, so I've went ahead and drilled these out so that my 5 millimeter blind nuts will fit. It's going to be tough to get these hammered in good. So a little trick I like to use is I take a flat washer or a fender washer. I put the screw in or the bolt in, and I tighten these up with the fender washer on there. And what that's going to do is that's going to draw in the blind nut into the wood on the back side. That way I'm not trying to squeeze a hammer down inside there to knock these flat. Because there's a little lip right here, I was afraid I'd get into it with the hammer, trying to hammer them in. So it's just as easy to go ahead and draw these tight with the screw, and then you can back these out, and then your blind nuts are installed. What I'll do is I'll go back through and put a little bit of thick around these, so they won't come out easy. But that should work just fine. You're actually, with this setup, you're going to be putting bolts in from the back side anyways. And I'm going to actually use lock washers, so that'll pull it tight even more once I get the setup ready to go. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all 4 holes, and then we'll move on to the next step. So what I'm going to go ahead and do now is I'm going to mock this up. I'm just going to go through and tighten the standoffs. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of temporarily mount the motor on there. I don't want to go too crazy mounting this at this point, because I want to make sure that I am able to make adjustments, because I know for sure I'm only getting about 170 millimeters, and I'm going to need 180. First thing I want to do is I want to try out these bolts that came with the engine. So I'm going to go ahead and get these put through from the other side. And again, I know I'm probably going to have to go to the longer 5mm bolts once I get everything put in place, because I'm going to have to gain about, looks to be about 10 millimeters. But I just want to get this mocked up here a little bit so that I can double check the fit before I start making some changes. But everything should line up perfectly. These standoffs, this Stinger 35 fits exactly on the firewall with no adjustments other than just for length. And I'm just going to put a couple of these screws in here so that I can double check to make sure. And I think at this point what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run in the top 2, because that's really all I need to make my measurement, to make sure we're going to fit. And I'm just going to snug those up. I'm not going to go crazy with them. See, that one already there is already going to be just a little bit short anyways, because that's bottoming out on the other side. Yeah, so that's bottoming out. I'm going to have to actually go ahead and use the longer bolt on this one anyways, just because to get that fit so that I can measure it, I want it to be perfectly adjusted to the firewall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap this out for the longer 5mm bolts so that I can make sure everything is going to fit. What I'm looking to do is I'm looking to get this measurement from the front of the prop hub to the firewall. For fitment, I need 180 millimeters. And last time I measured it without actually putting anything together, it looked like I was going to be about 10 millimeters short. But we're going to double check just to make sure. So now that I've got that in there and everything's all set, actually I want to draw that up a little bit tighter. I don't like that. I want to make sure that's all the way up so that when I measure, I get an accurate measurement. We're hanging up on something in here. There it goes. Probably had a little burr in there. Okay, so now I can measure this to see where we're at. So right now I'm showing almost exactly 170 millimeters. So I'm going to have to gain another 10 millimeters to get it out to 180. So now that I've got the motor all mocked up on the front, I'm going to stop this video here because the next step is going to be covering to get the cowl to fit. and I want to make sure that's all in one video, and I don't want to make the videos too long. You can see here I went ahead and I've got exactly my 180 millimeters is exactly at the front of the rear of the prop hub. I went ahead and ran my ignition through here. You can see I'll have plenty of room behind for cooling and also for my ignition wire to run through here. I'll probably attach this to the firewall. I might use a staple or something along that line to hold it back so it stays away from the muffler. And then the ignition is in the box here, which is where I plan on keeping it. Other than that, I think that's going to do it for this video. Stay tuned. We're going to tackle on the next video. We're going to tackle getting the cowl cut and all of the rest of the engine, the tank installed, and all that kind of stuff finished up, so we can move on to getting everything else set up. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and have a legendary day.